has he delivered?
Stoudemire trying to keep the ball because
they don't call the foul, and D. Brown gets two. Oh, my. 45 seconds left. A three-point game. What a comeback by Illinois. They were down by 15. Oh, my.
you know with under a minute that Illinois is going to be slapping at the ball without worrying about a foul, and D. Brown slaps at Mustafa Shakur. The nice pass by Darren Williams, and all of a sudden, we've got a one-possession game. The Illini showing the heart of a champion.
Throughout the season, when in trouble in the second half, they've managed to find another gear. Can they do it with time running out? There is Ingram to bat the ball away. Williams could tie it with a three. He does! Tied at 80, 38 seconds to go.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Just a Couple of Guys with Pat Crimmins. Wave, Pat. And yours truly, Ray Rogina, now in our 11th month. You know our motto, we talk everything. And today, as everyone is fine-tuning their brackets for March Madness, we will be joined by longtime, storied, and now retired basketball coach of the Batavia Bulldogs, Jim Roberts, who will talk high school and NCAA hoops. Jim will join us shortly. But when we return, Pat and I will have our recommendations to you as you fill in your brackets, and perhaps our producer, Paul Stucco, will have an opinion as well. First, a message from one of our fine sponsors.
Seconds to go. Here comes the play. Goodman at the free throw line. Jumper.
Hello, friends. When you think about buying a new or used vehicle in the Chicago market, there's only one name that really stands out: McGrath. When you are thinking about which brand is synonymous with reliability, value, technology, and performance, it's Honda. Put the two together and you have two great options: the all-new McGrath Honda in St. Charles and McGrath Honda in Elgin. Both stores are ginormous with acres and acres of inventory. Choose from Honda Civics and Accords, CR-V and Passport, even the Ridgeline truck. Visit our brand new location, McGrath Honda in St. Charles or McGrath Honda in Elgin. You'll be glad you did. Hello, friends. This is Ray Rogina. You face technology challenges every day that threaten to steal business, compromise data, and bring your business down. Without a good partner to help protect from phishing, ransomware, viruses, data breaches, employee turnover, and cybersecurity threats, your business is at risk of losing everything. TechWorks has been the trusted IT partner to Fox Valley businesses for over 20 years, keeping systems secure and providing extraordinary customer service, helping your business grow. Call TechWorks today at 630-482-2227 or visit www.techworks.com. That's TechWorks with a Q, TEQ Works, and see how TechWorks IT service can transform and secure your business.
On a second, separating shot clock and game clock. Bronson Koenig ties it up. 2 to go. Trip to the Sweet 16. Koenig's got it. Rises up. The shot. And it's good! It's good!
We're back, and as promised, and I know you've all been waiting for this, we want to provide you with a little insight as to how we think your brackets will be successful this year. Pat, you always fill out a few brackets. In fact, I know that if you were not going to Springfield, you'd be right in the middle of the first day's action, drinking a few beers with friends of yours.
I would be. It's an interesting year. I've missed the Super Bowl, and now I'm missing NCAA Day, which is also, Ray, my anniversary.
Well, I happy
you were there, weren't you?
on that. Mine's coming up a week after yours, as you know, and I'll be celebrating mine as well.
Now, we marry different people, so everybody understands that.
That's exactly right. Now, let me make a caveat here as we start this conversation. All of our conversation here, even though we're not naive, and we know that many of you are involved in basketball, NCAA pools, perhaps there's some cash here involved, who knows?
Allegedly.
Our conversation is purely for recreational purposes. There is no desire on our part to be giving you picks where you may take the picks and put some money down somewhere. That's not our intent here at all. You do what you have to with the information, but as far as we're concerned, this is for recreational purposes only. Pat, do you want to start the ball rolling here?
I do have a 1-800 number if people are interested in calling for my pick.
Why don't you give that out? Once again, you call his bluff. He won't.
Now, what do you want to do? Top.
I want you to first. Let's start with this.
Elite Eight.
Go to your Final Four. Maybe how do you approach this thing very quickly, and some bracket busters you think they should be tuned into, that they may want to put on at least a couple of lines.
Well, generally, you always want to look at the 12s and the 5s and those types of matchups, because there's always some kind of an upset, and you just got to try and figure that out. I certainly don't watch as much college basketball as I used to, so I certainly can't sit here and say that Furman is going to beat Virginia, that kind of thing. It would be difficult for me to say that, not knowing the players and not spending a lot of time watching basketball. As you recall, back in the day, players used to play for 4 straight years, and you got to know the players, you got to know the teams. And
That's right.
And you knew their various propensities, and you knew what they were good at. Were they big? Were they quick? Defense. But now with the one and dones and stuff, it's difficult to try and gauge what a team is and the matchups. So, yeah, I kind of haphazardly look at it. And, I've got a couple of daughters that played high school basketball, so they're very interested in it. And so we do a little fun little rotational bracket, but I don't get too serious. And as you know, I'm not a gambler. So.
Is there a team or two, as you said before, a 12 seed, a 10 seed, 11 seed, that you think could, move along, though? It's not like you don't study it at all. I know you don't dwell on it, but you read the papers.
Well, most of the teams that I have moving forward are, 1 through 4s, 1 through 5s. So I don't see any major upsets here. I have like Virginia going. I have Arizona going. Purdue, Kansas State, UCLA, Kansas, Texas, Houston, and the Elite Eight. So there are no surprises there.
All right, who's your Final Four then?
Final Four, I have Arizona, Purdue, and Houston and Kansas.
All right, all blue chippers, all thoroughbreds.
Right.
And then after that Saturday Final Four, who gets into the final matchup on April 3rd?
I have Purdue, Houston.
Both
I like
one
Purdue.
seeds. Both one seeds.
I know Houston suffered an injury here, might affect them, but I have Houston winning the thing in Houston. Home field.
That's right. They're playing in Houston. If they get to the Final Four, they'll be in Houston. There's an interesting possible Elite Eight matchup in Texas, in Houston, between Houston and the University of Texas. That could send a lot of cowboy hats flying in that 70,000
I have that matchup
dome down there. All right, well, I'm just going to make a couple comments. I agree with you 100% that you have to look at the 5-12 matchups, and the things I've read suggest that you want to have one double-digit seed on the Sweet 16 line after the first weekend, at least one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I do not, on mine, I do not, but I think that's, I will say this, that there are 3 double-digit seeds that I really like a lot, though, that I think we're going to make some noise, and I'm going to throw those out for whatever it's worth. From the MAC conference, your conference, where Northern Illinois is, Kent State against Indiana. I'm not, I'm just saying, keep an eye on that one. And then and from my conference, the Missouri Valley, where ISU is located at, Drake, they're going to make some noise. And last but not least, this team is not hiding anywhere. And they have actually got a lot of respect from not only the betting public, but others as well. Florida Atlantic. Those are my three bracket buster teams. And then as far as my Final Four are concerned, I told you this offline. If you're filling out brackets with your family or just for fun or just for a hot dog somewhere, then I can see you going along with number ones. But if you are in one of these pools that I referred to earlier that we're not going to comment on too much more about, but the fact is, if you are in one, picking one seeds, or everybody's picking one seed. So my advice has always been pick some good teams, but stay away from the one seeds. Then this is just personal on my part.
It's like horses, Ray, right? You don't bet the 2 to 1.
Yeah,
you bet the 8 to 1s, right? Yeah.
But this is personal on my part. Also, you want to look for a couple of good Catholic schools. Being Roman Catholic that I am, I always like to root for them. And so, lo and behold, I'm filling my brackets out, and who kind of rises to the top here? Beside a couple of one seeds, Alabama and Houston, I think they'll be in the Final Four. I don't like Houston because of their coach. He's got a sketchy past. And Alabama, I will just say, we know that their team is, the star player is under, I'm not going to say criminal investigation. I think he's been cleared, but there's been some, reference to him being involved in some criminal and nefarious activity. And that just bothers me in and of itself. So I'll leave it at that. But I think they're strong teams. They'll be in the Final Four. My other two teams, though, a 2 seed and a 3 seed, Marquette, good Jesuit school from Milwaukee, Al McGuire, strong team this year. And I think they'll be in the Final Four. And a team that gets there all the time, but is always Cinderella. But they're always strong. And that's another good Jesuit school, Gonzaga out of Spokane, Washington. And I'm suggesting that Gonzaga and Marquette will play for the national title. And I like the Golden Eagles to give another disappointing shot at Gonzaga and win the whole thing. Paul, what do you got over there in the producer's booth that you might want to relay for?
I'm too busy thumbing rosaries to really comment very much.
Did we get the special dispensation for
right?
Friday?
Exactly. I imagine the Pope would show up at that game.
Well, I tell you, a battle of Jesuits is tough.
That'd be tough, man. They wouldn't be drinking Gatorade; it'd be holy water in the whole bit. It'd be nice. I noticed that the first thing I saw Ray, that the Jesuit was strong with you. God bless you. I too am Catholic, so I appreciate that. On the other hand, I hate Notre Dame, so you know what? I don't hate Notre Dame as much as I used to. You've actually brought me around a little bit.
Glad to hear that.
And the fact that Notre Dame,
they are nowhere to be found this year.
Yeah, well, there you go. And that's one of the reasons I can take them back on. So I, as I was telling you guys, I have PTSD when it comes to the tournament because growing up, I was an intense Illini fan. Intense enough, actually, after I got married, my wife would throw me out of the house during a tournament, just not only for Illinois, but for Big Ten teams. So kind of lived and died with it for a long time. And the results recently have been quite disappointing, as everyone knows. And so it's like I'm asking myself, why am I watching these games?
And Paul, if I may, you must have been something in 2005 when they won that historic game at the Rosemont Horizon against Arizona.
Ray,
only to fall flat against North Carolina and finish second.
Well, okay, I will object to the falling flat. We were down by 22 at half, and we tied the game. So we didn't fall flat. We came back in our we lost because we didn't get a rebound. Anyway,
you fell forward.
That's in the national title game. Oh, Ray, when I was in Arizona, I was in Arizona at the time. I was at a resort in Arizona, and I literally almost got every person in that resort knew I was there. I'll put it that way, because I was making a lot of noise, and it was truly one of the best nights of my life. It was just because I was getting a lot of grief
and
from
I
Arizona
assumed that when the
fans.
game was over with, Mai Tais for everyone.
Oh my Lord, there was I don't know. I was
Whip,
drinking
orange
scotch.
whip.
And there was a wedding actually at the resort. And they all got into it as well. But I was getting I was getting so much grief from the Arizona fans, and that comeback was just. I kept telling them, just wait, we're not done yet. And it was magical. It was absolutely magical. Anyway, so for me, I always lean toward. I always make stupid brackets because they're always pro Big Ten, right? So here's where I ended up, and this will my sleeper would be Iowa or Penn State. Penn State has been really playing well. They're a very difficult
I agree with
team.
Penn State.
Penn State's a very difficult team to play because because of the way they play offense, and they play very good defense. So Penn State would be my sleeper. But in terms of my Final Four, of course, I have two Big Ten teams in the Final Four. I have who do I have here? I've got Indiana.
Oh God!
Yeah, I know.
Against Purdue.
I've got Indiana, UCLA, and then Baylor, Purdue.
Okay.
Huh?
And then I've got Purdue. I've got Purdue winning, and UCLA winning. So I've got Purdue, UCLA in the final, and I got Purdue winning the whole thing. Am I confident about that? No, absolutely not. But on the other hand, I'm not sure I can be confident about anything with this year. I mean, it's a wide open field as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Yeah, Pat's point about a Houston player being out, possibly. Same with UCLA; they're big defensive stars. Is he going to play or not? Do we know?
That's a fair question, and I do not know the answer to that.
We'll have to call Barstool Sports to get the lowdown.
So my problem with Houston is that they haven't played anybody. I mean, I'm sorry, these teams that play a few tough teams in the beginning and then go through a conference that is worthless. I just can't see them winning. No, they could win. Who knows?
Well, that's we don't talk about strength of schedule. I suppose we talk about conferences, but I like UCLA as well. I have them. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going. Miami, I like. I wouldn't be surprised if they go. Michigan State could go. You never know what our friend is going to do. Duke obviously could go.
Yeah.
So there's some teams out there that could break it up a little bit.
Duke's really hot. I mean, if you want to go with the hot team, they're very hot. So
well coached too now.
Yeah, and a lot of the experts are picking Duke to be in the Final Four as well. I never did like Krzyzewski. I think a great coach, but I just never liked him. I thought he was always a ref baiter, so I never liked him. But the fact is, he's had a great career, and I'm not going to take that away from him.
Had a pretty good teacher on the ref baiting, right? Bobby Knight.
That's kind of quiet. He does it very quietly, but it's out there. Anyway, Paul, I just make one comment with the Big Ten. It's a 23-year drought, I think, for the Big Ten, thereabouts. I think 2000, the last time they cut the nets down with Izzo and Michigan State, like Pat just suggested. Yeah. So it's been a long time coming for the Big Ten. It'd be nice to see them in the Final Four, but
the Big Ten gets to the Final Four a lot. It's just they can't seem to win the damn title. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I mean, if you look at their number of appearances in the Final Four, that's very strong. That's very good. And it's usually different teams, so that shows the depth of the conference. But for whatever reason, we can't win that final game, and it's frustrating. It's been very, very frustrating. So, again, PTSD. I'll try to keep calm. I'll try to distract myself. But I do not have high hopes. Even though my bracket says what it says, I really don't have high hopes.
One of the most important considerations is the One Shining Moment video at the end of the tournament.
That's right.
It used to be so good, and now it's crap. I don't know what happened to it. But boy, I used to save that tape on the VCR there and just enjoy it for months. But now it's good.
Well, if my picks come to pass, instead of One Shining Moment, it might be an Ave Maria or Holy God, we praise thy name. Anyway, you heard Pat's picks, Paul's picks, my picks. What do we know? Probably nothing. just like you. Or what do we know? Everything just like you as well. So good luck with your picks. And we hope that you are the winner in whatever bragging contest you need to be the winner in. In any event, as promised, Jim Roberts will join us after this word from one of our fine sponsors. Stay tuned.
6.6 left. Raymond Green finds Lucius for the win. He got it! Spartans move to the...
Hello, friends. This is Ray Rogina. I'd like to say a few words about my friends at the Karas Group of Restaurants, one of our sponsors. I've been a frequent guest at all of their fine restaurants for years, one of which is Rookies, which has locations throughout the Fox Valley and beyond. My favorite dish at Rookies is the gyros plate with the Saganaki appetizer. Oopa! My wife, she loves the Hall of Fame chicken sandwich. But I can honestly say that I've never had a bad meal there, regardless of whatever I've had to eat. The wings are out of this world, the salads are delicious, great burgers, tacos, all-American specialties, and don't forget their pizza. And of course, you can wash this all down with one of their famous Mai Tais. Try them out. St. Charles, Geneva, Elgin, Hoffman Estates, Huntley, and Roselle. RookiesPub.com. I'll see you there.
You got to block out. You don't want to get beat on tipping. Fernandez. Frazier defends to advance, and he puts it down. Point for...
Well, Pat and I are back and very pleased to have Coach Jim Roberts with us today. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Hey, listen, before we get started with anything specific, perhaps you could tell our audience a little bit about your journey to being a Batavia basketball coach. We know you're a Batavia High School graduate, but in between there and coming back to Batavia to have a storied career there was something in between. Fill us in.
Well, as you said, I graduated from Batavia in 1976, went to Waubonsee for a year, and then a good friend of mine was at Northwest Missouri State, Mark Adams, who was a great player at Batavia. So I went and enjoyed the school there for 4 years. And then because of Coach McDougal, I got a job teaching and coaching right outside of St. Louis called Washington, Missouri.
Right.
Also known as the corncob pipe capital of the world.
And hard by the Missouri River, I believe.
Right through the middle of town. And we were there for 3 years. My wife taught grade school, and it was a very unique situation because we had 3 years of great players. They haven't had them before nor since. Not that it had anything to do with me, but we had Michael Sambodi played at Missouri. Johnny Duff played at St. Louis U. So we were very fortunate. Then we came to Batavia, and it was at that time it was a culture shock, even though I grew up there, because I was an assistant 1 year and we were a whopping 4-21. And they made a coaching change, and at 25 I became the coach. And we are in St. Charles, and with everything that Coach Johnson gave me a lot of very good advice as I approached that, and didn't make it any easier to try to beat St. Charles, but
of course,
and then I was an assistant for a year, and then I was the head coach for 27 years.
And during that run, I know for a fact that you did bring the Bulldogs to the state tournament.
Well, in 1991, we made a run to the Elite Eight, got beat by Marshall. Ironically, we're part of the movie Hoop Dreams. And everyone says, I saw you guys in Hoop Dreams. And I said, well, could you change the score? And we got beat down the stretch, and probably poor coaching on my part, but it truly was a unique experience. Ironically, the team from the year before, 1990, may have been able to beat the 91 team. For us, the team that was always waiting for us was West Aurora, and because my respect for Coach Kirkman is off the charts, but someone said, well, how many times do you think legitimately did he or West High keep you from going downstate? And I thought, 1976 as a player, they beat us in the sectional championship. 1990, 1996, 97, both in the sectional championships, in 06 in the sectional championship. And each year that happened, they went downstate.
The year you went downstate, did you get by West Aurora, or what?
We beat them at West Aurora.
All right.
And I always kid because my wife taught in the West Aurora district, so she had some of the players as fourth graders. Yeah. And they had won. They lost their first game of the year to Peoria Manual, and then they won 27 games in a row until we beat them on their home floor because they hosted the sectional that year.
And now we have the Duquesne Conference of Batavia, Geneva, St. Charles. They're all with Wheaton. They're all in the same conference. But back then, there was actually two separate distinct conferences for the so-called Fox Valley. We had the Upstate 8 and the Little 7. Is that correct?
Yes. And we wore that badge very proudly. The Little 7 was a conference that was in existence for literally, I think, over 100 years. And when we were in the Little 7, when we played West Aurora, we were 865 students. And they were pushing 3,000. Right. So, yeah. But we were very fortunate. We had kids that really realized how special it was. Kids with great talent, Corey Williams, Lamar Justice, businessman right down the street from us, Eric Chalk, Prestige Imports. And it was really a town feel because all the kids grew up there. And but probably the biggest thing for me and my wife and I, we were in the right place at the right time.
Sure.
And speaking of that, that long tenure at Batavia, returning as coach, but growing up there, and my conversation with you, just even offline here, I've already deemed you a basketball historian. Why don't you talk about some of the memorable teams the Fox Valley has had, let's say in that time span that you've been the coach, or even if you want to go back a little further, to growing up in Batavia? Well,
I can start up north. Obviously, this is the 50th anniversary of the 1973 Elgin team. That was the same year that the New York Knicks won the NBA championship.
That's right.
Elgin was bigger than the Knicks. 7-1, 6-9, 6-8, 6-6. They lost 2 games, both of them to West Aurora, because they split in the regular season. But the first game ever played in Chesborough Fieldhouse, West Aurora beat them. Okay. And they had an unheralded player at that time by the name of Matt Hicks.
Oh, I remember Mr. Hicks.
And the dunk was not allowed at that time, being in the early 70s. Matt could jump so high, he'd throw the ball down. And then West Aurora beat them, West Aurora beat them in December, and then I think it was in February, Elgin came to West High and beat them there. So they tied for the conference. And then they went separate directions, and they played Friday night down in Champaign in front of 16,000, and West beat them in either single or double overtime.
Wow.
And, it was truly a special 2 teams from the same conference. And Elgin was probably the odds-on favorite to win it all that year. I'll quiz you guys. You remember who did win the state in 73?
No, that was my first year teaching in St. Charles. So, but I'm drawing a blank.
Ricky Green and Hirsch. Ricky Green.
Oh, yes.
Ricky Green had a great career in the NBA. Ironically, and I'd kid Coach McDougal about this, West Aurora the next day, they beat the favorite. So now I think they become the favorite. And the next day they get beat in the afternoon by New Trier. They had a kid, became a pretty good baseball player up in Minnesota by the name of John Castino, second baseman, played for the Twins. But West Aurora, with all that firepower, has a record, and you can look it up, will never be broken. I know records are meant to be broken. It can be tied, but it will never be broken. They scored 0 points in the third quarter.
Wow.
It's high school basketball.
And that reminds me of another high school basketball game involving upstate Elgin when, this is back in the 50s now, at Old Huff Gym, Elgin scored 6 points in 1 second.
Rockford West scored the points.
Oh, they did? Okay. They were playing Elgin. Is that correct?
State championship.
All right. That's right.
And
6 points in 1 second.
The last time I was with Coach Chesborough was the summer before he died, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with the restaurant Burnt Toast.
Oh, yes.
Up in Sleepy Hollow. He liked to go there. And myself, Ron Johnson, John McDougal, and Bill Chesborough were having breakfast.
That's an all-star lineup.
And as I sat there with those guys, I looked and I saw, here's two guys, John McDougal, Bill Chesborough, who probably came closer to winning the state championship than anyone else. Because Coach McDougal's last game at West High, they got beat on literally a last-second shot by Laird Smith from Morgan Park. If you can Google it.
I remember the shot.
And neither one were bitter. You know, Coach Chesborough, like you were talking about, 6 points in 1 second against Rockford West. But both guys had a great handle on it. And then I'm thinking, there's Ron Johnson. That's only 800 some wins, so obviously, just three great human beings and great coaches.
What other teams jump up beside that one?
Well, we were talking about a number of St. Charles teams, the 78 team, Rick Garrison, Paul Brinkman, Greg Cudworth. I mean, that was a team that probably came very close to getting downstate, but Barrington had a couple move-ins. Ike Tomlinson, Ike Pearson, John Tomlinson.
We're still checking on their address.
Well,
to see whether
I don't know where they came from, but I know they both ended up at Michigan. So that says a lot right there.
Yeah.
But that's the state tournament unless you just have a powerhouse, anything can happen. And, the Geneva team of 63 was a great team. Phil Ralston had a team that got fourth in the state here in the last 10 years. Batavia had teams in the 50s with T.T. Harrison went to Iowa. Tom Ski went to Iowa. Larry Petty played in the White Sox organization. Of course, then the 60s with Dan Issel and Dean Anderson, Kenny Anderson. First 2 years Coach Vandersnick was at Batavia. That was in the era of the one-class system. And I always found that so amazing that at that time, Batavia High School was 450 kids. And on the 1966 basketball team, and Mayor Schelke, he can tell you much more in detail. They had three guys that signed major professional contracts. Dan Issel, professional basketball. Kenny Anderson, professional football. Byron Von Hoff, professional baseball, which is really an amazing thing. And then,
And I might add, I work out with the colonel at the Delnor Health Club all the time. He was in the Mets farm system.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He's pretty low-key about talking about
all those guys are. I think, like we were talking about Rick Garrison. I mean, he was a tremendous player, and, they don't have to say much. They know what they did.
Well, they do their talking on the court. I think,
Yeah, without question. And
can I get back to something you talked about a little bit earlier, which is Hoop Dreams?
Yes.
Can you tell the audience what that was?
Well, it started out as a documentary on two guys, Arthur Agee and William Gates. And it followed their lifespan or life careers at St. Joe's. And Arthur Agee was a West Side kid, William Gates, West Side kid, and everything that went into them at St. Joe's. Well, as time progressed, Arthur Agee left St. Joe's and ended up at Marshall. Well, both us and Marshall were long shots to get downstate because we had to go through West Aurora. Marshall had to go through King with the Twin Towers. And it just so happened we played them that night, and they beat us, and then they went on and got third in the state. But what was amazing, about 5 or 6 years ago, since Coach Pingator passed away, I knew Coach's time at St. Joe's was starting to close down. So I went and watched them play. I think they were playing Gordon Tech, or what's now DePaul Prep. So I'm coming home, and I thought, I'm going to watch that movie. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's not a movie where you just watch it because it's about 3 hours long. And So it took a couple of days. And by the time I got done watching, the thing that hit me was so many people in that movie at the time I watched it 4 or 5 years ago were already deceased.
Right.
And now I think about how many people since that time, Coach Pingator, Coach Cox, Al Williams, Luther Bedford, Arthur Agee's father was murdered.
Right.
I guess that's unfortunate. That's part of life.
I remember a point in the movie where they were celebrating the birthday of one of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
He was 16, and it was a big celebration. And they talked about the idea that usually it's rare for some black kids to survive to 16.
Well,
thus the celebration. Yeah.
Where Arthur went to school, Marshall, and when you guys were growing up, Marshall was probably 4,000 students.
Right.
The Commandos.
Yes. The great teams of the late 50s, mid 60s, George Wilson,
yeah.
Rich Bradshaw, Joe Stiffen.
I think they won in 58 and 1960, the state tournament.
Well, the big trivia question is, we know somebody in that movie, Hoop Dreams. You and I both know him, Josh Carlson.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
His family lives out in Canelan. His boys have done very well.
Yes.
He has a daughter who's done very well as well.
Yeah, Josh, we laugh because Josh grew up in St. Charles.
Right.
And then he saw the light and moved to Batavia. And the first time I met Josh, to show you how different life was even in the late 80s, he was walking to the high school. Well, from Van Norwick to the high school at that time, there was not much there. So obviously you see a kid walking.
Right.
I pull over, hey, you going to the high school? Never met me, gets in the truck and away we go.
Oh my.
Today you'd probably be arrested for that.
Exactly.
That's exactly
right.
You're right. It's a whole different time.
His son Troyer,
right.
will be a senior next year. And I think someone had told me if he scores like 400 points, he'll become the all-time leading scorer in the history of Canelan.
Yes.
When you start thinking, okay, as we were talking earlier, there's Dan Witt, played with Doug Collins at Illinois State.
Right.
PJ Fleck, who was a heck of a basketball player. Joel Fisher, who went to University of Denver. Chuck Turk, who went to Eastern Illinois. That's some pretty heady company.
Yeah.
So,
and he can throw a heck of a football.
Yes.
And Josh will be happy if he listens to this podcast or when he listens to it to know that I mentioned his name. I was present with Josh at the Big House back in 2011 for the largest crowd in the history of college football on campus. In the last seconds, Michigan stole the game from Notre Dame. It was just
Josh is a big Michigan fan.
Dear Lord. And the other people are with. I'm by myself with Notre Dame.
If Troyer gets an offer there, he has no choice.
Josh and his teammate Brian Schwab, they fight all the time because Josh, as you said, is a Michigan man.
Yeah.
Brian's Illinois. So they are.
As is our producer.
Well, and then one of our other former players, I see your Notre Dame flag, Lamar Justice, played at Notre Dame.
Right.
So they all graduated together.
Great last name, by the way.
Players?
Justice. Yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit. You've mentioned some of the great players, and I think we're talking about players that you've coached.
Well, coach, he's coached, but
yeah.
he's played against up and down the valley here.
Yeah, you're familiar
He's already
with.
mentioned a few, but there's tons more.
You're in your time as a coach in Batavia. Some of the outstanding players, some of the players that went on to play college and maybe even pro.
Well, I'll start at the south end because, in my opinion, he's probably the greatest winner ever to come out of the Fox Valley. Thomas Wyatt, 3-time All-Stater. In his 4 years at East Aurora, they went downstate twice, possibly could have won in 88. And the other 2 times, they got beat in the super sectional, and they got beat in the regional championship against West Aurora. At West Aurora, I always kid him. I said, how many guys could score 40 points in a high school game and not be the leading scorer? Because Mario Clark had 42. Wow. And they needed every one of those 42 points. Thomas Wyatt, Darrell Williams, Ryan Boatwright, Billy Taylor, Mario Clark, Derek Hollifield, all from West Aurora, East Aurora. Right. For our kids, Corey Williams, Lamar Justice, Dwayne Sarver played Hawaii Hilo, Nick Fruant, David Bryant, Geneva, the Navigato, Jack McDonald.
Yes.
Mitch Muscari, St. Charles, obviously, Corey Powell, J.P. Brenz, Elgin, Sean Harrington, Marcus Smallwood, the Howard kid that went to Indiana State. The Valley, has just been inundated with great players. And that's during my time. Before, you can, Corey Williams holds a single boys scoring record at Batavia for one game, 49. The guys whose record he broke was a gentleman by the name of Jim Howard, who played for New Mexico when they went to the Final Four in the mid-'60s, when the Final Four of the NIT, where he played in New York City, was on par with the Final Four.
That's right.
In the NCAA. Mm-hmm. Well, the night he had 42, there was a guy named Ken Gustafson from St. Charles. The night he had 47, Ken Gustafson had 42. And then, of course, they had one of the Brenzes, both Brent, I forget, Jack Brenz. Jack Brenz and Ken Gustafson went to Wisconsin.
Right.
Jim Howard went to New Mexico. So, this area, being the 50th year of the great game I was telling you about, the Upstate 8 at that time, Elgin had 4 guys that went Division I. West Aurora, I think, had 4. East Aurora probably had at least 3, all in one conference. But in 1990, when we played West Aurora in the first game of the regional, of the 10 players that started that game, 7 played Division I basketball.
Wow.
In the first game of the regional.
And we cannot forget the great Rick Garrison.
Oh,
but he's already mentioned Garrison a couple of times.
Well,
I think.
Rick,
standout players.
Well, Rick, ironically, was a small world.
Past neighbor.
And Rick's way too humble to ever, say much, but he played his college ball. First, he went to junior college, I believe, out in Wyoming, and then he played in at what used to be Southwest Texas State,
right, exactly,
which is probably 30 minutes from where my wife grew up in San Antonio.
Wow.
Now I think it's referred to as Texas State.
Yeah.
But he was a bugaboo in Batavia's side for a couple years.
Yeah. And he sounds a little Texas now.
Yeah.
I don't know where he.
Well, my wife has lived up. She's lived up here more than she's lived in Texas, but she always reminds me, don't forget I'm a Texan first.
Yeah.
Let's talk real quick about a few of the legendary coaches that you, of course, referred to a couple already, but I'd like to get your if I mention the name, or Pat's going to mention some name as well, just some thoughts that run through your mind, just in a capsule fashion. Again, we'll start with Coach Chesborough in Elgin, Jim Chesborough.
Legendary. For the amount of time that he spent there, he succeeded a great coach. I believe it was Frank Kraft. I asked him one time, I said, Coach, how did you ever get, because he's not an Illinois guy. He was from Ithaca, New York. And he said he was here at Great Lakes and somehow matriculated to Elgin, liked what he saw, and never left. Had his style of play, liked to play zone a lot. The list of players that he had were, pretty phenomenal. The changes that he's seen in Elgin, going from a town of 1 high school,
right,
now to
five in the school district, right. 46, and
it had to be pretty unique to be teaching and coaching in the building that they named after you. Normally that's unheard of, but when they moved from downtown, to the east side of Elgin, that's what they did.
Yeah.
That's why I continue to coach mock trial, hoping they'll name something. No, I'm kidding. RJ, Ron Johnson, St. Charles.
Coach Johnson, once again, these guys had styles. And Coach Johnson, if you're going to play his team, you knew that guys were going to get out and run. I don't think from the time I was in third grade until the time I quit coaching that St. Charles ever had a team that didn't have shooters, both from the floor and from the free throw line. And his kids just got out after. They kind of played, I don't want to say what Golden State is doing now because the three-point line wasn't in effect all the time.
Right.
But I once asked Coach Johnson, I said, why did you choose that style? And because they weren't blessed with great athletes, so to speak. He said, number one, I thought kids enjoyed playing that way.
Yeah, sure.
Number two, felt it gave them a shot at beating some of the great powerhouses that they had to compete against. And, and then he said something. He goes, my dad's teams played similar to that. And once again, it's hard to compare through the eras because I never saw Mel Johnson's teams play, but obviously his success was pretty phenomenal in what he did.
And you mentioned Mel Johnson, and he brought a Geneva team to the state tournament.
Yes, in 1963. I think it was the first year that Assembly Hall was in existence, And they got beat, I think, by Carver, who ended up winning the state. No, Carver or I think it was Carver. I'm not sure.
And then next to John McDougal, West Aurora, NIU.
Well, he was the biggest influence on me personally. Not that our teams played anywhere near the same style because his teams were much better defensively. But once again, he had a way he thought basketball should be played. He's big influence on him was Henry Iba.
Oklahoma State.
Yes, very patterned. Although, I used to kid people because, they talked about Coach McDougal like he was the second coming. And Coach said to me one time, he said, the first 2 years he came to West Aurora, he couldn't get a haircut on the west side of Aurora because people didn't want him to coach there.
Wow.
But he's originally from Southern Illinois. He was part of that exodus of Southern Illinois coaches that left to come to better paying jobs. And people thought, well, he came directly from Carmi to West Aurora. He did not do that. He went to Prospect High School for 1 year. He was a sophomore coach. And he always would remind me, he said, that 1 year they were undefeated at the sophomore level. And I said, well, what great players did he have? And he had a Southern draw. And he said, well, we had a big kid. He wasn't much of a basketball player, but he could hit the heck out of a baseball. Dave Kingman.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so when he came to West Aurora, it would have been 1965. Ironically, his first game was played at the old Batavia High School against Dan Issel and his teammates. But when he was at West Aurora, they were rebuilding. So the first year they took some tough losses, and I don't know where they were coming from. Might have been Lockport, but his assistant had been there a couple years earlier. And his assistant was a guy named Gordon Kirkman.
Yeah.
And he said, after this game, he said, John, you're going to have to realize West High may never be very good. And in Coach McDougal's words, he said, Gordy, stick around. It's going to change. And, I think it worked out pretty well for both those guys.
He went on to Northern, of course, as Pat just alluded to, and it was relatively successful over there. Did you get a chance to watch some of him develop his craft at Northern?
Well, he's the all-time winningest coach at Northern Illinois in 10 years. The thing I think that he did that was very special at Northern was he recruited Illinois very heavily. And, a little west of there, the Allen Rayhorns, the suburbs, the Kenny Battles, the Rodney Davises, the Randy Normans, the city, Sean Thrower. Paul Dawkins was there prior to Coach getting there, but I don't think Kenny Battle ever would have went to Illinois had they not fired John McDougal.
Yeah.
He's
an active player.
Because people tend to forget Kenny didn't go to Illinois directly. He went to
Northern for 2 years.
Yes.
And you mentioned Coach McDougal's assistant, who created his own legend in his own right, and that's Gordy Kirkman at West Aurora.
Well, Coach Kirkman, just moved last summer. He's out in the state of Oregon. Talk to him weekly, and he is the Fox Valley. The things that he had done is very legendary. I guess as Coach McDougal got older, he suffered from macular degeneration, and we'd go see him, and he'd wave to us, and as we were leaving after lunch, and something Gordy Kirkman said to me one time. He said, he was pointing at Coach at the door. He says, I could have been just as happy being his assistant for all my career. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, people don't realize Coach Kirkman didn't become the head coach at West High until he was 38. And that's right. The time now when most people are looking to get out. But he stayed there for 38 years and over 800 wins. So you can imagine, had he been there earlier in his life, right, he may be, Coach Pingator is the all-time leading winner in the state of Illinois, but Coach Kirkman might have been. But, you mentioned Elgin, Coach Harrington, he had a great run there at Elgin. He did. Also. Those are all guys that, I looked up to. So.
Well, we wanted to talk about a game infamous.
I've heard it. I wasn't present, obviously, but it's talked about all the time.
Batavia St. Charles 3-0, and I had the under. When was this game, and what happened?
I always get the years mixed up. I think it was
early 60s. Jack Brenz was on the team.
Well, I think it was 59 or 60, because T.T. Harris went to Iowa. Tom Ski. Oh, excuse me. No, not Tom. I don't think Bill might have been on the team, but Larry Petty. Ironic thing about that game was that Ron Johnson's dad had told Bob Tolber, who was the coach there at the time at Batavia, that a week or so before St. Charles had played Geneva. And he said, you might want to have something up your sleeve in case they try to stall. Not that they stalled like they did the night it was 3-0, but he said they were very deliberate. And, so it wasn't, I was going to say something that just kind of was out of the blue. They had an inkling, maybe not to that extent.
And no shot, of course, no shot clock Correct. Here, so we can stall.
Correct. So like the four corners.
Well,
exactly. What I was told, it was just the guard holding the ball on his hip. And how much passing. Yeah. But ironically, the same person from Batavia, Dick Abhalter, scored all 3 points. And ironically, he was the person throughout the year who scored the least amount of points. Yeah. So, and I don't know if it was a basket and he got fouled or exactly what.
His whole life, he'll know that he was the leading scorer at least one game. Right?
Well, yeah. He's since passed, unfortunately. But
I was under the impression that the lights went out or something.
Not to my knowledge. Well, what was ironic, we ran, when we were coaching, ran something called the Night of Hoops. And we would have teams coming from all over the state of Illinois, Quincy, Rock Island, Simeon, King, St. Joe's. Well, the night we were playing Simeon, we always try to recognize someone for their contributions. We were recognizing Bob Tolber, who was the coach of Batavia at the time. And obviously, as we're talking, it's a pretty unique thing. Right. And we wanted to put that in the program. And he was adamant. He says, I wish you would not do that, because he felt that and I think the coach's name at St. Charles was Babe Baptist.
That rings a bell.
He felt that helped him get relieved of his position. And Coach Tolber was very, very forthright. He said, please do not put that in. Yeah. And obviously we didn't. But, that was a very unique thing. And ironically, as playing Simeon that night, Robert Smith was the coach who just got third in the state. He's going to be set to retire, but he had every one of those kids from Simeon shake Coach Tolber's hand to the day Coach Tolber died. It brought tears to his eyes, But
well, Jim, we're going to go to a commercial break and hear from one of our sponsors. But when we get back, we're going to talk about the tournament, March Madness. Give us some tips to make our brackets, maybe, and then talk about what you think you're going to see in the next couple of weeks.
First free throws today. Missed it. Here they come. One timeout. They don't take it.
At McNally Heating and Cooling, we understand that customer satisfaction starts with arriving at your home on time. Your service technician will apply the same attention to detail and quality workmanship to every job, large or small. We offer upfront, honest pricing, and we'll make sure the job gets done right from start to finish. From furnace and air conditioning service, minor repairs, or total equipment replacement, we do it all. Give us a call or find us online and let the luck of the Irish work for you.
I think C.J. McCollum can get a shot for somebody else. He doesn't necessarily have to shoot it unless he's wide open.
Oh, how about that?
Shoot denied. They got Knutson wide open. Knutson slams it home.
But then you factor in that it's Duke on the losing end. And what you have here, folks, one of the all-time shockers. Lehigh defeats.
We're back here with Jim Roberts. Jim, before the break, we talked a little bit about March Madness. I think today we're going to start with the play-in games. And obviously we want you to help us with some tips as to some bracket busters or what your thoughts are about this particular tournament, if you have any. I filled out my bracket. I know Ray's always thinking about his. I'm sure Ray has more than one.
Absolutely.
What do you see?
Game
what do you see? What do you know, Jim?
Well, since both Dan Issel and Corey Williams Dan went to Kentucky and Corey went to Arizona, I just fill out two brackets. I just put Kentucky all the way in Arizona, but I don't see any dartboards down here in the studio.
No. Christmas gift idea.
And I would think that would probably, if all of us took our darts out and started throwing, that would probably be the most logical way to pick teams. As far as a bracket buster, people keep talking about Marquette as being.
Oh, I like Marquette.
I don't know. They say Northwestern could, depending on their brackets. The team that kind of interests, well, two of them, Illinois and Arkansas, and I think whoever wins that 8-9 game,
sure,
they can make some hay because of the style they play. We were talking about different schools. Well, the coach at Arkansas is Eric Musselman, Bill Musselman's son, who coached
Ashland, Ohio.
Yes.
Dear Lord.
Yes.
I went down to Evansville, watched them play ISU. What a game. Slow down a whole bit.
And then the coach at Illinois, Brad Underwood, played for Bob Cavisto, in junior college. So, they say UCLA could be a team to be reckoned with. I know Alabama's the number one seed of the entire tournament, but it's hard to go against Kansas, as far as, so I really don't have any bracket busters, but looking at your brackets, there's someone that's out there. I know. Okay. Well, no wonder you can win. You're going with Houston twice. Are you sure that's not Texas?
No, it's Houston. No, it's in Houston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've note to self. I have Houston.
Okay. Well, I tell you what.
Stick with a winner, Pat. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, they're playing in Houston.
That's right.
Kelvin Sampson's had great success there.
Yeah.
And
Note to the audience that was the producer.
Well,
hissing.
You know,
missing because of last year's Illini defeat.
No cheats. That's why.
well,
I
gone.
was asked, as long as the producer brought that up, what about, I mean, you know, all kinds of rumors about him and Bruce Pearl and a few others that are cheaters. You know, I don't know if they are or are not, but you're the guy who is involved with this and follows this to hook, line, and sinker. You know, so what about that?
well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all hearsay, and now with the way the rules are, I don't know if there is any cheating because the NIL, the stuff that's going on today. You know, I know in what limited contact I had with Division I coaches, because you know the majority of our players didn't play Division I. I know in the recruiting process of Corey Williams, which was very unique because he literally could have gone to any school in the country because he had the combination of basketball skills and academics. We never saw a hint of impropriety. Now that was 30 years ago. And I'm sure it did go on, but it, like you said, we were talking, it's so drastically different now. You know, I'm a high school guy. I love high school basketball. Now I see when a kid signs, it's, well, my strength coach, my speed coach, and the last person mentioned is the high school coach. And that always rubs me the wrong way because, you know, at that time, the high school coach was a main part of the process, where now I don't know if that's the case.
Right.
You and I talked about this offline when I was first asking you to come on, and I asked you this question. I'm going to ask it one more time for our audience. Your thoughts about one and done, and for the audience, you sign a player for a year and they're off to the pros, and recognizing, of course, that baseball, they might be well in baseball if they play at the college level. Though I'm not sure they can.
Yeah, there's
pro.
different stipulations, but yeah, I mean, you know, I think the scary thing of it is for every guy that envisions himself as a one and done or the next Kobe Bryant, there's a lot of roadkill.
Right.
And, you know, I think college coaches have to play the hand they're dealt the way the rules are, you know, because I would ask guys who are much more connected to it than me, I said, why would a guy with all the stuff that took place, like at Louisville, why would that go on? Well, you know, and once again, it's all innuendo, hearsay, whatever. If you think that, you know, at that school over there has 3 guys being paid and you're getting your fanny spanked on national TV when you know impropriety, then you got to make a decision. And, you know, like I said, we never, in our short window, my wife and I never saw any impropriety whatsoever. But I'm not saying it doesn't go on. I mean, but then I wonder too, guys sitting around, well, you know, if you're getting 50,000, I got to say I'm getting 70,000. You're going to say I got 80,000. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, I can top you. And I don't know if that goes on much. I have no idea.
You know, that's why this NIL thing I think is dangerous because, money affects a lot of decisions and the portal and kids changing their minds. And
well, I've asked the question to people much more knowledgeable than me, and they don't have the answer. Like if you go into the portal, say you want to leave Northern,
right? You
go into the portal and you find a school, then obviously you're going to go there. But what if you don't? Then do you go back to Northern, or do you have that option?
Right.
And now if you're Northern, they know you wanted to leave. Do they really accept you back with open arms? You know, I'm just using it as an example. I don't know.
Right.
And but we're all old enough to remember when, you know, the monstrous rule took place in the early 70s of freshmen being eligible. That was going to be the ruination of college sports as we know it. But, you know, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, I think the game trumps everything. I mean, for me, and of course I'm prejudiced, the Saturday of the Final Four is even better than the championship because the anticipation,
sure,
just anything can happen.
Well,
remember Kareem was playing the UCLA freshman team. Go ahead. You had a final.
Lou Alcindor.
Well,
Kareem, yes.
Well, the thing of it is, people don't realize this, because it really was a milestone. The team that won the national championship his freshman year. Do you remember that team?
I do, but I'm trying to remember. See, that would be 1960. Wait a minute. He won in 67, 68, and 69. He was a freshman. Texas Western beat Kentucky.
And the milestone of that game was the first time an all 5 starting black lineup beat an all white. And that was called the what'd they say? The civil rights game.
Right. It's legendary.
Yes.
Beating Rupp, who I'll say this, allegedly was a racist.
Well,
I don't know that for a fact.
You know where Rupp came from before he went to Kentucky?
No.
Right in our backyard. He was. This is hard to believe in this day and age. Adolph Rupp was the coach at Freeport High School.
Pretzels. Before
he went to Kentucky, supposedly he wrote a letter to the president of the university. If you want to hire the best blankety blank college coach in America, hire me, and they did.
Wow.
I think he was there from 31 to 72. But what was ironic about the Texas Western game, or Texas Western, and you've seen the movie Glory Road.
Right.
They make it sound like Texas Western fell off the turnip truck. They only lost 2 or 3 games the whole year.
Don Haskins was the coach, if I remember correctly.
And that was the year that UCLA, they'd always scrimmage varsity against the freshmen to start the year off as an exhibition.
Right.
And UCLA was the defending national champions.
Right. They won in 64 and 65, and lost in 66.
Well,
came right back and won the
freshman team beat them by close to 20 points.
Yeah.
Of course, they had Lucius Allen, great players like that.
You had one last question here.
A couple more questions. One was, you sent a lot of players to college. I remember back in the day when I was in high school, we had college coaches come to the high school, talking to Randy Wright or whatever it was. Dan Devine came. Recruiting, has it changed as far as you know from time when you were a coach to now?
Well, as an outsider looking in, yes, because now with the growth of AAU basketball, it kind of puts the high school coach on the shelf, because a lot of colleges now, like when our guys were in high school, to get an invite to the Morris Shootout was recognition of how good you thought you were going to be.
Right.
Because they'd have a 32-team tournament in the middle of July, and teams would come from all over the state of Illinois, every corner, Quincy, Rock Island, the city. And I know we had the privilege of playing there. Corey's into his senior year, they had an area roped off. Every Big Ten head coach was there, along with Mike Krzyzewski, Riley Massimino. But the only 2 guys you never saw were Rick Pitino and Jerry Tarkanian. But, when Kentucky recruited Corey, their staff was Rick Pitino, assistant coach Tubby Smith, assistant coach Ralph Willard, assistant coach Herb Sendek. Herb now coaches at Santa Clara. And they had a graduate assistant that made, I think, $400 a month. You guys might have heard of him. He's close by. He makes more than $400 a month now. Billy Donovan.
Oh, really?
I would say he does.
So,
well, I think it has to change. Obviously, you got videos, you got coaches can watch from a distance, you got all sorts of opportunities to see kids. You got huddle.
Yes.
Right. So
and one of my former players, Steve Schaefer, that's his business. He puts together videos of players that might be under the radar.
Right.
And once again, when people think of college basketball, all they think about is Division I, because it's on national TV, and I get that. But, I would encourage players and their parents,
Sure.
if they think their son or daughter's a college basketball player, go watch a junior college game. Go watch a CCIW. The level of play in those games are amazing.
Right.
And, I'm not a golfer, but I can watch golf on TV and I say, yeah, that doesn't look too hard. And, until you go out and do it. And
well, that's why there's AAU, right? Because otherwise you're not going to get better unless you play against better. Right?
Well, we kind of did it differently during our time. And as my wife always tells me, you couldn't do it this way. We would take our kids in the back of a pickup truck to Maywood, to Bellwood, to Chicago Heights, to Hillcrest. First time I took a group of kids to Maywood was our 97 group that went 26-3 and got beaten in the sectional finals by West Aurora, who got second in the state. Well, we're playing, but I always tell the kids, wear a Batavia t-shirt because someone's going to know someone who's going to know someone.
Right.
So we get out and, the kids are playing and car pulls up and guy gets out. It's Donnie Boyce, who's now the coach at Proviso East.
Oh.
Next guy gets out of the car, long drink of water. Sherelle Ford. Next guy gets out of the car, Mike Finley. Those guys all played on the 91 team at Proviso East. They all knew Corey, so they had a connection with Batavia. And to this day, Donnie Boyce is a very good friend. Brings his team out to St. Charles East for the Thanksgiving tournament.
Right.
And so unfortunately, some of the places you take kids now, the threat of violence is too relevant. And but that's how we did things,
Right. Well, I just wanted to finish up with what's your assessment of the local schools now? I know Geneva had a little success. Of course, if St. Charles East and St. Charles North were together,
right,
they would dominate, of course. But what do you see locally?
Well, I've been very fortunate to see a lot of the teams play. You have good coaches, guys that work hard at developing players. As a fan, I hope people start coming back to high school basketball. I kind of thought that maybe after the pandemic, people would come in droves, but up to this point, that hasn't happened. But unfortunately, I think you have NFHS as an alternative. Right. But there's nothing like, to me, for $5-6, the opportunity to watch high school basketball is special. And I guess, that's the purpose of what we're talking about here. It's just unique.
Yeah.
Well, excuse me. Both Pat and I want to thank you for a wonderful, wonderful trip down memory lane that I think our basketball fans here in the Fox Valley will be happy to listen to and reminisce, as you mentioned, a variety of names from the 60s right to the present day. And so on behalf of Paul and Pat and I, thanks, Jim, for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So for our valiant producer, Paul Stuckel, a high school basketball player in his own right, wishing the Illini success in the tournament, but knowing they will break our hearts again. For Pat Kremens, good luck, Pat, this weekend at the Mock Trial State Tournament in Springfield, where you go for your 4th state championship. I know you're also wishing for NIU to be in a March Cinderella hunt, but the impossible does not occur very often. This is Ray Rogina wishing Doug Collins was back at ISU so that he could make a tournament appearance as well. And for our listeners, I hope you have wonderful brackets that are the envy of family and friends. Remember, the days are longer and the nights are shorter. That's a song. And baseball is around the corner. So be courteous, be kind, be thoughtful, and be safe. So long, everyone.